Welcome back. You got Will and I Man here from the Block Runner, and today we're going to be talking about more Robinhood projects.
We got an update for y'all. Yeah, as we should.
Yeah, we're Robinhood fanboys now, right?
Absolutely. I think everybody is, including one of our oldest pals, which we'll introduce at the very end here.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure if you guys have been long-term viewers, you'll know exactly who this legend is.
He's quite the legend.
Yeah, he's almost GOAT status, if you will, right?
Yeah.
So who is it? We'll let you linger on that for the next 20 minutes or so, or you can just fast forward here if you really wanted to find out. But yeah, there's a reason to be, experimenting here on Robinhood. And here's one.
Yeah, so let's take a look at this. There's around $1 billion of assets in Robinhood chain today. If you zoom out, on-chain RWAs are $335 billion, with $296 billion of that being stable coins. Yeah. Meanwhile, global equities are $152 trillion, and global bonds are $150 trillion. FX trades $9.5 trillion per day. We're still insanely early in bringing the financial system on chain, and that's happening through Clarity Act and many other.
Yeah, so there's a lot of other macro factors involved, but clearly the process is beginning, right? Whether to what degree does the trickle kind of like, permeate in our direction? Unknown. I'm sure with laws like that getting passed through, it's going to amplify the faucets, open and closed rate. But nonetheless, some of it's trickling in. And how much do you actually need to capture for this market to be of significance, right? It's $1 billion collectively already on Robinhood. I mean, it's a lot.
It's a lot, but
it's a little.
Yeah.
If you really think about it.
Still nothing, yeah.
Still many magnitudes left.
Yeah, multiple X's, yeah. All right, here's another tweet. Pudgy Penguin's founder, Cole Ethereum, just minted out his new collection of 44,000 supply for roughly $1.28 million. He sold NFTs, dude.
In 2026. We got to remind everybody what year this is.
Yeah, we didn't go back in time or anything. This is 2026. You're right.
Yeah, which is why this stands out, right? It's like Robinhood chain has gotten, this, I don't know if you want to call it frothy yet. Maybe this is a sign of froth. I don't know. It depends on your stance and view of NFTs.
Yeah.
I definitely never assumed NFTs to come back in this, in this legacy format.
Mechanic, yeah.
Whereas literally we're rerunning the same playbook. Like the distribution model hasn't really changed a bit since the OG days, meaning you create a collection, here's how many there are, here's the price of each one, boom. The guy who made the collection just made $1 million, $2 million. 2021, 2022 was all of that, right?
Yeah.
But it ran itself dry.
Yeah, so I think it's due to a connection to Pudgy Penguins, right?
For sure. I'm sure that helps amplify things. Is an ex.
Yeah, so I say that so you don't assume that you can just spin up an NFT collection and
make $1 million.
Yeah.
Of course. It's the social capital lends itself in different, varieties. And this guy decided to take a stab at it because so far all the NFTs we've seen do well on Robinhood, like Stonkbrokers, Mancer NFTs, they were free mints, free distributions with a burn process to qualify.
Right.
So things are accelerating, right?
All right. So, but if you were to make $1 million selling NFTs, what would you need to do? Build a brand on X, pick the hottest chain, launch an NFT collection, set it to 44,444.
Some meme supply, I guess.
Yeah. Price it at $17 each, sell out in 30 minutes, and then you're roughly in the realm of making $1.2 million. And that's what happened with Cole here.
So what are they? So little spirits.
Yeah, flames. You call them spirits. I see flames, but
I think they call them wisps.
Wisps. Okay.
Yeah. So if you play Dota, IO is a wisp, is it not, TJ?
He sure is.
Yeah, you don't know what we're talking about, dude. It's a little insider.
So is a wisp just a flame-looking thing?
No, actually, IO is
like a spirit,
an orb.
An orb.
Yeah,
okay.
Just a spherical, anomaly. Just floats around and makes
But it's called a wisp in the game.
I think it originally was called Wisp, and they had to change its name to IO or something for IP infringement reasons, whatever.
Really?
Yeah, Blizzard is a motherfucker, dude.
Anyways,
that was a side tangent.
All right, I'm fully focused on Robinhood NFTs right now. Free and $2 mints are already trading for $100 to $1,000 and even $21,000. Thank you, Stonkbrokers. Yeah. And it still feels like we're extremely early.
Yeah, I mean that looks pretty interesting. We haven't seen an NFT breakdown in a while, where it's like here's the market. There's like the beginnings of such, right?
Yeah.
Where clearly there's a blue chip in Stonkbrokers, the highest value. Then there's second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever. Right. So this to me is like relaying anybody who's interested in NFTs, right? Like this seems to be the domain to kind of like experiment with,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
the market is demonstrating that through the value of things. And that's it. It's really crypto's not that hard, guys. Just if you listen to the market, it tells you things, and opportunity tends to be there.
Right. Simple Farmer with an update. Robinhood chain native DEX up on RH, which is I think it's just called up.
Yeah.
In our
on Robinhood.
On
right?
Robinhood, yeah. Is our new special projects partner. This V33 engine will power the Stonk exchange, and the Stonk launcher.
Yeah, so somebody in our community was like, didn't they like tell us to check in on this?
Yeah,
up?
they did. Yeah, actually, hold on, let me find that guy's name.
Yeah, you deserve a shout out, my lad. But unfortunately, the problem with this medium is like, we can only upload so many videos. And
yeah, his name happens to be Jay.
What a name.
Just one letter.
Shout out, Jay.
Yeah.
For making a good call. But unfortunately, again, we weren't able to like bring this discovery to our channel because, we can only post so many of these a week.
Yeah.
But he said, it's like, hey, you guys should look at Up because it's like the first V33 setup on Robinhood. And if you understand the significance of that, that's like a very widely used DeFi primitive on every other chain, right? So and it was like sitting at like, maybe like a million market cap or something at the time.
Yeah, so here's a website and this was the yeah.
Yeah, he was telling us right around there.
So Jay was telling us like you should look at this at $1 million.
It's like shit, we'll get to it, dude.
Yeah.
This is like wait till next week and then boom. We kind of missed it a little bit.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, so what is it?
So let me go back to this. So own the liquidity layer on Robinhood.
Yeah. So VE33, it just works. It's a voting escrow system, right? Where you can lock up the token, get issued these like voting power tokens, and then you essentially can dictate like where liquidity goes within these pools by voting for them, right? So it's a useful way to, attract liquidity to the platform and to, I guess, dictate which of the pools get the most bulk of the liquidity support, right? And then the incentive to that is token emissions, like based on your votes.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting little, mechanism. But I guess Stonkbroker, because they're creating like primitives in the token market, they needed this liquidity layer for their own products.
Right.
So that's the nature of the partnership, the nature of the God candles here. It's them. I mean, it's Stonkbrokers, right? It's the flagship project on the chain at the moment. So anything they decide to like utilize is going to go up in value tremendously.
All right. So Stonkbrokers launchpad goes live today. These are the 4 projects. We got clock in coin. It says no trading tax. So some items, ticker yard HQ, which we're going to go into, cross chain asset routing plus upcoming NFT collection.
Yeah. So they're continuing on their special launch partner program because they keep having to delay the actual launch. I mean, we said like a week or 2 ago the launchpad would go live, but there's been delays, and that's understandable, right?
Yeah, we've been through that.
Yeah, shit is hard to ship, even with AI.
It is.
It's still very hard to ship good products, and you gotta like technically vet everything, and maybe they're running things through legal and such just to like see what's the ramifications here.
Yeah.
Right. You never know. But nonetheless, while the delay on goes, there are other projects to pay attention to, right?
Yeah, so one is ticker yard, and there's one thing I wanted to show here. Key risks, and so this is a long post. It says ecosystem is expanding beyond just the NFT collection that about to flip punks. Ticker yard has published its white paper. Stonkbrokers turns NFTs into stock-owning assets. TickerYard turns NFTs into protocol operators and build the routing layer for the assets that interact with. Finally, people are grasping that NFTs don't have to be just pretty JPEGs. So this is like Stonkbrokers in a way, but it asks you to do some work.
Yeah, it's another project launching that's building another primitive layer, right? We saw Manser wanted to build kind of like a Jupyter, order book system, but like without a actual custody of the assets. So it's like, the NFTs have some involvement there. Therefore, it's a little bit of like a work intersection to the ownership of the NFTs itself.
Yeah.
So like that is kind of like it's becoming normalized, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't just have an NFT and expect
Yeah.
yield. It's like, how about the NFTs do some work that helps the functionality of the underlying protocol itself,
Right,
that they're like strapped to succeed and like fulfill on whatever it is the users need out of that protocol, right? And the reward for that is
you get paid.
yeah, makes sense, right?
The logical future flow would be Ticker Yard routes the asset, Manser trades or automates it, and Stonkbrokers and Anvil provide the launch liquidity distribution layer, and then Stock Booster recycles eligible fees back into the stock rewards. The final Ticker Yard to Manser connection remains theoretical for now, but seems pretty obvious. So a couple key risks and an additional thing to kind of read here. So they have a pretty deep white paper, and I will kind of read this one. The Keeper NFT, a fixed Genesis portable participation seat whose current ownership epic can authorize one local runner. It is eligible infrastructure, not a universal credential, employment promise, or client revenue right. Its canonical token-bound account may receive source-specific funded payments under separately approved rules. No Ticker Yard payout exists in the MVP.
Wow.
Yeah, so an
that
NFT
sounds like lawyer jargon to me, dude.
Yeah.
Sounds like they're taking very
the
clear
CYA protocol, cover your ass protocol.
Yeah, I would say so. It's like, in case it wasn't clear and obvious, like we're not just gonna funnel like money to you by holding this. Like,
Yeah.
it's a participation seat, right? So
Yeah, you have the rights to participate, and if you do partake, then you get paid.
yeah. So the rest of the white paper kind of breaks down exactly what you're doing, like what does the participation entail, and then for what purpose, like what end goal. And to my understanding, it's essentially like a bridging, interface for stock tokens themselves, right?
Yeah.
So that they can be migrated from chain to chain with like minimal friction. And I think, it sounds like a useful primitive for sure. Like if we're assuming this, RWA cycle to fester and continue to grow, like it sounds like a very fundamental,
like useful
prerequisite to like, enabling the festering beyond just Robinhood, right? So
yeah.
That's the bet you're making essentially. Like once this token is live, and that's what's different between, Stonkbrokers. The token's live first, get some of the token, and then exchange them for the NFTs if you want to do the work.
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think the previous launches were more like NFT first, mint your NFT, and then you can exchange them for tokens if you want to, Anvil.
Yeah, yeah. So we got a tweet here by Pump and Dump Profit. .dmt.
I mean, he's a fellow DMT supporter, potentially. Yeah, we'll see.
All right, so fair launch through Clutch Market Anvil. So this is G-Yard. This is Yard, which is almost 2 billion fixed supply, 100% circulating day one, 200K initial market cap, and then get Yard, then use it in Anvil to acquire the 3,333 Yard keepers. No whitelist, no snipers, and no private rounds.
Yeah, so similar setup again to Stonkbrokers. There's a token, there's the supply of NFTs. They're 1-for-1 bound.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, they're compatible with the instant liquidity mechanism of Anvil, right? Which is nice.
Yeah.
If you've been partaking in the stockbroker ecosystem, it's nice to have that fluidity between assets, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I like this. I like the style, starting with the token first. All right. We're looking at net capital management. It says shareholder services terminal. Looks like we built this in 1995.
That's probably pretty deliberate, yeah.
Yeah, so we're 30 years into the future, and we're back to where we all started.
Nostalgia.
Yeah.
Does this not bring like good memories?
No.
It does it?
I didn't. Actually, Windows 95 was pretty great.
Okay.
But the UI wasn't all that.
Yeah, but still, what would you rather have? Like some sleek, like AI slopped interface that everybody fucking has, or like something? This isn't like original, but at least it's like got some taste to it, right?
Sure. Yeah, this is a vibe.
There you go. Definitely a vibe. I'm feeling the vibes too.
I like it as well.
You like it? Okay. All right. We got consensus
We got
here.
vibe consensus.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we got coin flip. So what are these assets here? They're essentially games.
Yeah.
Coin flip, a provably fair coin flip played for real money. Pick a side flip is settled on chain. The winner is paid in coin.
That's Coinbase's coin. I mean, Coinbase's stock.
Oh, Coinbase's stock. Okay.
They don't actually have a coin.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So funny, it's coin flip, right?
Yeah, great branding.
Yeah, so Climb, it says a Game Boy career played for real money. Every purchase on the way up buys net on the tokenized stock into your own escrow book, and it stays yours until you resign, lose the career, or take the chairman seat.
Yeah, so
a number of games here.
Yeah, they're cool. If you click on them, they're, maybe click on one, see what happens. Let's click on WinNet. Let's see what that is, dude. Yeah.
Okay, so this is not the ticket you buy. It's a deposit that plays. Your money stays yours. One deposit plays every night. The prize is the interest.
So I think this is like a no-loss lottery type game. Like, here's your prize pool, $1,000, right?
Okay.
Yeah, this reminds me of like Pull Together. Where it's like people kind of like deposit money, and then like somehow external yield is being generated from that money to create a prize pool. So nobody like loses any money.
Yeah, correct.
This is an old. I mean, this is this is like the first DeFi app we like discovered. Remember Pull Together?
Yeah, I remember Pull Together. It was like a really ingenious design.
Yeah.
People put their money together. It goes into a DeFi yield vault.
Yeah.
And then
that is the prize.
And the vault generating the fees, the vault generating the yield is the prize.
I think it was DAI, right?
It was DAI, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like DAI's lending protocol, and then you get some APY from that, and then that app would just use that as the
because think about it. If you put $100 into this yield, you're not going to get that much interest.
Yeah.
But if you pull it all together, you put in $100,000
right
over the span of a week. That's like a few $1,000 that you win. But then once you lose, you get your principal back out.
Correct. Yeah, it's a no-loss lottery, dude. It was like, dude, that was a thing that made us like really pay attention to DeFi. It's like, I want to see more of that. And then, it got crazier from there.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah, it wasn't enough. There was yield at 10,000% APY.
Yeah, I got actually genuinely way crazier.
Yeah, so I guess this is the manifesto here. So we're building a reserve currency for Robinhood chain. We got a flywheel. That's a very important mechanic. So we got utility, goes to demand, reserves, the NAV, and then the dividends.
Yeah, so they're building a treasury and building like a lot of external like revenue sources, like these individual games or whatever, to bolster the acquisition of the treasury of stocks essentially. And then they're issuing a reserve asset that's like dependent on how much that treasury is growing, right? It's like 1-for-1 backed.
Yeah.
And then there's like a net asset value premium to that based on like what the actual value of the token is at the time. Like right now, I think it's trading around 8x or so, like to the value of the actual treasury.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure if that's like super out of bounds of reason. I mean, it's crypto, right? Whenever we were talking about like MicroStrategy.
Yeah.
How crazy did that get?
We got very crazy. It performed probably 2 to 3 times better than Bitcoin's return.
So the NAV was like
the NAV was like way over 2x.
Okay.
Like
so,
way
so
over.
like that's crazy in the stock market sense. Like,
Yeah.
MicroStrategy at its peak was like 2.5x.
Yeah, 2.5, yeah.
To its net asset value. So in crypto, you're allowed way more absurdity.
Yeah.
This thing could probably go 100x to net asset value just because there's so much speculation around it. And the thing that's interesting is there's a comparison to previous cycles, right? In OlympusDAO, which we're going to get to.
Yeah. All right, so shareholders, we have officially crossed 100,000 RWA volume via Rialto. What matters most is that 300 new users bought their first tokenized equity via one of our products.
I like that. I like that signaling that messaging to a tweet. It's like, I agree. It's important to highlight that we're bringing in new users like to the ownership of tokenized equities, like to the market, right? Like, I think those are messages that Robinhood team themselves are going to appreciate.
They're
right?
going to look for that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, who's actually like building products that is increasing the holder base of, tokenized equities? Cause that is our main product here. Right.
Yeah, so they're calling their shareholders. Over 415,000 now sits in the net capital management treasury.
That's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's literally again. So we're going to talk about the comparison here to OlympusDAO. They did the same thing, but not with tokenized stocks sitting in their treasury, right? It was just crypto assets. DAI, ETH,
Yeah.
whatever, right? But yeah, early days, it looked like this, where there's like 100K,
Yeah.
eventually got to 1 million. And I think at its peak, it had like 400 or 500 million sitting in its treasury. And
Damn.
yeah, let's see what the value of that is.
So another tweet here. We wrote last week that RW Play is the best meta tokenized stocks used as the working material of games and desks, not held as one or not held as one more position. Coin flip is that thesis at its purest. The stock is the stake, the pot, and the prize. Every USDG bet buys real Coinbase stock live through Rialto.
Mm-hmm.
Every payout delivers in a real wallet, and the venue that hosts that activity is the fund you already hold.
Yeah, so a little bit of like a, I don't know, like a Stonkbrokers vibe to it. It also, where it's like, you know, we can continue to build these like RW Play products,
Yeah.
which to me they look like they're just games.
Yeah.
Maybe they're gambling apps, whatever, right? But the underlying premise to them is like the real got of these products is the tokenized RWA. Right?
Yeah, so here's a description of one of the games we were looking at. Climb is a complete Game Boy style RPG about corporate life where every purchase is a real position. Bribes and club dues by net on the open market. The 401k and the capital calls by tokenized stocks through Rialto. And everything sits in the player's book at risk until they resign, die on the ladder, or beat the chairman. The jackpot pools holds its $20,000 seed plus everything that's fallen have left behind. A winner takes half the pool plus the entire book, and the last count, 26 careers, had concluded without anyone surviving the shareholders meeting.
Okay.
So it's a whole like RPG style game where transactions are real purchases of these assets.
Yeah, it's you know, if you're trying to find like a visual comparison, it's like, you know, when you go to Dave and Buster's, there's that machine where it's got like all them coins.
Yeah.
And like you put in another coin
Yeah.
and it's like pushing
Yeah.
in and out.
Yeah.
It's like, well, one day like all the coins are gonna fall. And you're hoping it's you.
Sure.
It's hoping it's the guy who I was the one who put in the coin that made the, you know, the $1 million watch that's sitting on top of the pile of coins to like fall in so I can claim it.
Yeah, they
It's
probably
similar.
have a really strong magnet in that machine.
Yeah, I've never won shit ever,
Yeah.
like in any of those situations, but nonetheless, they're still fun. And at the end of the day, they generate revenue, right? Which is what's important for this treasury concept.
So here's net. So it was hanging around 600, 700,000, and then now it's at 2.5 million.
Yeah. Or 4.2 million market cap. But there's, yeah, so that's the premium we're talking about.
You're right. Yeah, 4.2.
4.2 million. And then there's a treasury sitting at roughly 400 or 500K. So there's an 8 to 10x premium there. So that might be people's like skepticism. Is like, hold on, dude, why are you paying, you know, a premium to what the treasury's worth? Well, it's fucking crypto, dude. People like to speculate on future value of things.
Yeah.
Why is that important? Well, let's again trace back to the originator of this concept.
Yeah, so here's OHM today sitting at 280 million, which is pretty good.
Yeah, I'd be happy if, what is it, 4 million?
Yeah, 4 million. Yeah.
Ended up 200 million. That's a great call, block runner guys.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's not the story. The story was that OHM got to as high as 4 billion. But this was in 2021 when DeFi was going ham.
Correct. Yeah, so this is DeFi summer days, and OlympusDAO brought something new to market, and it was an interesting experiment, and you know, again, it generated that treasury value in the hundreds of millions. So that's the speculation here. Can NetNet replicate that same kind of activity here on Robinhood chain, which is the new DeFi summer, if you will?
Yeah, so I want to go back to the first tweet here, and there's a lot of assets not on chain yet. We got global equities, 152 trillion, global bonds, 150 trillion, FX trades at about 9.5 trillion per day. And so like this is still early days. But the most important of all, Tap protocol.
Here's where our legend
is
revealed.
Yeah, we are going to fill the RWA gap between Robinhood and Bitcoin via Tap. Yeah. It says infra exists already, entering the app phase.
Yeah, so there's a lot of context we need to add to this. Maybe we'll make another. Well, once we actually know what the hell Benny is up to.
Yeah, so we've known Benny for a long time. He's the founder of Tap, and we were exposed to him in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And so Tap protocol is the protocol we're using for NAT, and NAT is probably the most important crypto in the whole planet. If you don't know what that is, just search that in our YouTube channel.
Yeah, we've made plenty of videos about NAT. So it's, as of yesterday, it was not like a related to Robinhood thing.
Yeah.
But maybe with this, maybe somehow it can find its
Absolutely.
like access point to this nexus of activity on Robinhood.
So NAT on Robinhood, right?
Well, for sure. That sounds like an easy step one. It's like at least give people who, you know, have some USDG or whatever to buy some NAT on these decentralized exchanges. But having it be there is like, what's the next steps beyond that? Right?
Sure.
What can people cook up around NAT and TAP protocol itself, right? So yeah, maybe this is calls for another interview with Benny to explain yourself, dude.
Yeah.
What have you done here?
Come to the podcast, Benny.
Yeah, we need to know.
All right, that's it for us. We talked about a bunch of stuff happening on Robinhood, and if you guys find anything interesting on Robinhood, definitely let us know. Join our Discord. We have a Telegram specifically for NAT, but hit us up in the DMs on Twitter. And thank you for watching. We'll catch you in the next video.
Peace.